Finished it, and Joe sent me a copy. I played it. I thought, God, I can't tell anybody I played on that.
Joe knew what he wanted. He had the idea in his head and the sound. And when we heard it, when he said, listen, we couldn't believe it.
What can you tell us what you thought?
Crap.
I have quite a lot of artist sounds in me. I made the John Lake hits, Johnny Remember Me, Wild Wind, and the Mike Berry tribute to Buddy Holly. Then, of course, there's a Moontrackers, Night of the Vampire, and Danny Rivers' Can't You Hear My Heart, Ian Gregor's Can't You Hear the Beat of a Broken Heart, and then, of course, up came Telstar. So altogether, that's about 8 hits I've had.
Yes, I imagine it was his finest moment. He really thought he had everything in his hand, and he thought it would continue, you know. That time had come. Now he's got a multi-million selling record. The money must roll in, and we can do bigger and better things. So it wasn't to be.
I've been told, and I'm sure it's true.
During Telstar Mania, the Tornadoes bass player captured the public's imagination, largely because Meek had persuaded him to dye his hair blonde, to make him stand out from the rest of the group. His name was Heinz Burt. Meek changed it simply to Heinz.
Let me put it this way. Somebody promises you the earth, and you're playing in a small town, and all of a sudden, before you know it, there you are, the London Palladium. Bearing in mind I was, 18 odd, I thought, well, the man knows what he's on about. It's going to happen. And it did. The only thing that didn't happen was the money.
The money?
And that's what life's all about, let's face it.
Did you live there, though, for a while, didn't you?
Yes, I lived at the flat above the studio.
How soon afterwards was that? How soon after you met him?
Well, practically then, because I came from Eastleigh and I had nowhere to stay.
Right.
So I stayed at the flat there.
But
for about 3 years.
And he lived there as well?
Yeah.
Meek intended Heinz to have a place among the first luminaries of the British pop scene. Wild, Faith, Fury, Richard, and Conrad.
I was very popular at the time. I was voted England's most popular singer in 1961. They called me the face of 1960. Joe also looked after a boy called Heinz, who didn't like the idea of Jess Conrad coming into the stable at all. Great jealousy there. And we were doing a show at Walthamstow Empire, or whatever it was called, somewhere in that area. North London, anyway. And Heinz was on the show, and I was doing my act, and I know I was being spied on by a couple of his band. We all had our own bands then. We didn't share bands. And I went very well. I always went well, but this particular performance, I scored a rundown on my first number, which means the whole audience get up and run towards the stage. Anyway, we met in the corridor backstage, and Heinz said to me, you nicked my act, Jess, you nicked my act. You jumped on the amp. And I said, don't be silly, Heinz, please, grow up. I said, what do you mean I nicked? I said, to tell you the truth, I said, we've all nicked Elvis's act. Anybody can jump up on an amplifier or on a piano, but I didn't normally do that, but I did it on that night. And I didn't know he jumped up on the amp because I never watched him. I watched people like Gene Vincent, Jerry Lee Lewis, but not Heinz. And I figured that he didn't have an awful lot to teach me. Anyway, I grabbed him and I bit his nose off. And he squeaked like a pig. Well, most people would. And I threw him against the wall, and he goes off, and there's a big schmozzle backstage, and no stage manager. And I go back into my dressing room, taking bits of Heinz's nose out of my teeth. Heinz's nose has never been a delicacy, not even then. And when I look back on it, it's horrendous. But we did those things then. We were rebels. Anyway, we had a fight, and Joe Meek got to hear that we had this fight. And of course, Heinz was his golden boy. I touched Heinz. So that was it. I got this letter saying he no longer wanted to record me.
Do you think, looking back on it, do you think he was in love with you?
Yes. It was an infatuation. I think so. It was a thing, let's put it this way. If there's something you can't have, you want it even more. And I think that was the thing with him. Where I told him to get off, I wasn't into that sort of thing. It was this thing. It's the same. I mean, everyone, if there's something you can't have, you want it even more.
But what Meek wanted wasn't to be. Hines had only one substantial hit. It was another Goddard tribute, Just Like Eddie. However, it didn't shake Meek's faith in his own judgment.
Sadly, it did go to his head a bit. Got a bit carried away, became the great record producer. It was a tremendous achievement, there's no doubt. But it did seem to produce a change. The friendly, sort of down-to-earth Joe we knew before had changed somewhat. I remember an example. A boy came to the door once for an audition. He'd come all the way from up north somewhere. Normally he would have been welcomed, you know, come on in. But no, I'm too busy, says Joe. I can't see him. Tell him to go away. It's terrible. I had to go all the way back home. That's a silly example, perhaps, but just one of how he changed. Great man now, which seemed rather a pity.
Loneliness, whoa, he's got his claws in me. Loneliness, whoa, seems to be my destiny. Made to cry in the night. No one seems to treat me right. Loneliness, whoa. What's to become of me? Happiness, yeah, always seems to pass me by. Happiness, yeah, give some to this lonely boy. I can treat someone good with everything a lover should. Loneliness, whoa. What's to become of me?
Why I adored the music of Joe Meek was that it was incredibly inventive and different. Telstar by the Tornadoes, Have I the Right by the Honeycombs. It was a different sound. It was as different in its own way as Phil Spector's sounds in America at the time. He was making all the Righteous Brothers and Ike and Tina Turner, and also Bob Crewe, who was doing all the Four Seasons stuff. And I became very fascinated by the production end of things. And I approached Joe Meek and said, would he please make a record with me? And I sent in this demo of this song and was surprised to hear from him that, yes, he was prepared to have a go. So I went up and met him. He was very charming and very nice, in this strange little place in the Holloway Road. I was full of trepidation. I mean, I was only a teenager anyway. I was nervous as hell. I'd heard a lot of things about his reputation. I was sort of worried that I was going to... I mean, he had a terrible reputation as a raging old queen, and I thought I would immediately be groped. I wasn't, I hasten to add, which I since regard as thoroughly unflattering. He was terribly nice, dug out this old acetate, scratched old acetate, of a song that he'd written, and we went in to record it. And it was a truly amazing experience because, apart from anything else, I'd never known before or since the bass drum sound. He said, oh, we won't need that, looking at the drummer's bass drum, which, of course, immediately offended the drummer, who I think had a seizure and has not recovered since. He said, no, we won't need that. He said, what I'll do is I'll do the bass drum sound while you're playing the rest of the track. And he unwound this old BBC radio microphone that was bound up in sort of felt and all sorts of other things. And he took it round the corner from the bedroom where the record was being made, where we were playing, into the bathroom. And he stood in the bath with 1 foot in the bath and 1 foot on the floor, the bare floorboards outside the bath. And he stamped on the bare floorboards in time with the record. And of course, if we made a mistake, he was listening through his headphones. He'd shout through the door, no, no good, do it again. And the microphone was miking this stamping on the floorboards. And sure enough, he got the Joe Meek bass drum sound, which was this incredible sort of thuddy sort of sound which people spent millions in recording studios for many years, many decades after that to emulate. But they never knew that's how Joe did it.
In the middle of a session, once we was doing a quiet bit with a bit of acoustic guitar, not electric acoustic, you know, and we'd done a lot of mad knocking on the coffin lid and all this coming out of my coffin, and Jack the Ripper's done all that, and it was very loud. So we cut that to this quiet bit, and all of a sudden there's a banging, you know, dump, you know, all all that routine. And he said, who's that? That drummer's bloody... And he come in and they go at the drummer. The drummer said, I didn't touch nothing. So he had another go and it was still doing this. And he said, the drummer's definitely banging his drum. He said, we're not. And then he come in and he said, look, I'm not even standing by the drums. He got out, you know, he stood by the side. And it was knocking, you know, like a ghost. And he said, it's that bloody woman again. And what she does, she's banging with a broom, you know, a broom handle. The old broom, she was banging on the ceiling, see? So, and he said, completely ruined the bleeding session. And he would go out there and stop it, you silly old bag, you know. We're trying to work up here, you know. And she said, this is supposed to be a private house, this ain't a recording studio, you know, this isn't Las Vegas.
Streets of a London kind of never say yay. Whenever Jack the Ripper ever shows his face. Jack the Ripper. So you pretty little girl, you better watch your step. The Ripper. Jack the Ripper. Hey, John! Late at night. The Ripper. The Ripper. Oh, he walks down the street. If I got him in, says your name, Mary.
Well, then disaster struck, of course, in the following year, 1963, when he was picked up by the police, importuning for immoral purposes, and this appeared in the newspaper. And he was terribly upset about that. It was such a showing up, of course. And from then on, everything went wrong.
He was frightened to face the world after that for quite a long time. He was lucky. He didn't hit the press in a big way. You expected to see Joe Meek arrested in big headlines in the Daily Mirror the next morning. You know, and everything would be finished. He visualised, I'm ruined. This is going to ruin me. Everybody now is going to know I'm queer and cut me off. This was his reaction. Secondly, he was terrified that his family would find out. If his mother ever got wind of of this, he would be finished, I think, mentally.
That was a big shock. But these things happen.
I think a lot of it was blackmail, you know. I think Joe was blackmailed a lot by some people.
Why would
I don't think Joe was as bad as they made out to be. Not his social life. Because he had plenty of girlfriends up here, you know. And he had a lot of people didn't like him. They were a bit jealous of him. And I know he told me once he was being blackmailed. But it never rung a bell to me, you know.
Peter Patter, what's the matter? Peter Patter, what's the matter? I don't care, no, I won't cry. 'Cause I know my baby loves me, and she'll show it as time goes by. Whoops-a-daisy, it drives me crazy. I mustn't tell a lie. Whoops-a-daisy, it drives me crazy.
I've always said that it's not what you got, it's the way that you use it. I have developed a recording technique to suit myself. Nobody really tells me what to do. They never used to when I recorded for Phillips and Pye.
This is the pop business as the customers see it. The groups and the fans see pops as one long swinging ring-a-ding rave-up, a ball, a good time.
The very last tour I did was in 1964. A virtually unknown group called the Rolling Stones closed the first half, and it was a 6-week tour, and as the tour progressed, I sort of noticed that this strange group was getting quite a lot of attention and applause, so we moved them up to the second half, the slot before me. And the last week was quite traumatic. It was a very difficult act for me to follow. And I think the writing was on the wall at the end of that tour.
It's very difficult thing to say exactly what makes a hit record. Because I've come up with quite a few, I'd be rather silly to listen to other people and change it.
Meek didn't think the beat boom would last, but he met the challenge of the new groups with a hit of his own, Have I the Right by the Honeycombs. It was #1 for 2 weeks.
Have I the right to hold you? You know I've always told you that we must never, ever part. Oh, have I the right to kiss you? You know I'll always miss you. I've loved you.
Just like all the other hits, Have I the Right was recorded in Meek's flat.
I'm right back, I just can't bear it. I got some love and I long to share it. Come right back where you belong. Oh yeah, you belong. Oh yeah, you belong.
Honey, is this the first record you've made?
Yes, it is the first.
It must be exhausting work playing those drums.
Not really, no.
What's it like being surrounded by 4 men then?
Oh, they're all right. I look after them. You know, I do their hair for them, make their tea.
Joe Meek now produces recording tapes only, leaving the big record companies to make and distribute his records. But even here, he has his problems.
Again, I met with a lot of difficulties because I kept coming up with hits, and the A&R men and different people tied to these major companies were inclined to be a little bit envious and complained about the plugs my records were getting, and so I have to watch these people like a hawk.
In a letter to a colleague, Meek wrote, "No one should be left in the office alone, even if you think they can be completely trusted or are friends of mine. It's important also that no one is allowed in the control room or studio without Dennis or Michael around. Always check with me if it could be safe to leave them there to rehearse, wait, or hang around. Always keep bottom door locked unless I say otherwise."
I went through a period with him where he says, I started to talk to him. I said, oh yeah, about the new record we're going to do this. Oh, don't talk here. Don't talk here. And he took me in the passage and he's looking around. He said, oh, well, don't talk here, right? And I said, well, where should we talk? He said, halfway down the stairs. And I said, well, what's up then? He said, it's being bugged. He said, the place is bugged. I said, what is it? The Russians? What is it? And he said, no, it's these other songwriters. They come in here and they put a bug here because they keep beating me. I keep getting this idea for a song and someone else does it. And I said, well, you don't think that's a coincidence? He said, no, they're deliberately bugging my flat.
Meek was no businessman, and he'd suffered severe financial problems since Telstar. Sued by a French composer for stealing the tune, he'd never received any royalties. But confident he would win the case, he'd been spending heavily against the money that he believed was due to him.
Well, I woke up one morning and thought, right, all the stardust, all the glitter is gone now. Where is the money? And that's when problems started. I bought a boat, for instance. Globetrotter, it was called, after our third record. And I used to love that because I love fishing, you know. And one day I just turned up to go out fishing and it was gone. Went to the harbour bloke, I said, where's the boat gone? He said, oh, they come with papers. It's been sold. I thought, charming. A similar thing happened to my car. The Zephyr 6 Estate I had, brand spanking new. All of a sudden, somebody at the door, come to the door, I've come for the car. I said, what are you talking about? Come for the car. He said, there's the papers. I've just bought it for Minesburg Limited. And he drove off with the car. I was carless as well.
used to come to locations like this, in this particular graveyard. One reason was that Joe wanted to capture sounds like he used on Screaming Lord Sutch's record Till the Following Night. And the other reason was that he hoped to capture sounds of the supernatural, people from the other side. And one time we came across this cat, and it seemed to talk in half-human tones. He recorded that on his portable tape recorder, and we've still got that for posterity.
Sometimes I find myself alone regretting some foolish thing, some little sinful thing I've done. I'm just a soul whose intentions are good. Oh Lord, please don't let me be misunderstood.
By 1966, the pop music world had changed out of all recognition. Have I the Right was Meek's last top 10 hit, and his output diminished to a trickle.
Now, I used to go shooting a lot because of the pressure of working, obviously, gigs. I used to travel. I had a breakdown shotgun that you broke down into bits, fitted in a case, used to have it in the car. And I'd go, say one night I was in Carlisle and the next night Doncaster, and I'd be travelling and I'd stop off at a farm, knock at a farm door and say, would you mind if I do a bit of shooting? Because that was my relaxation. I used to go out and shoot a few pigeons and rabbits. And I didn't like to leave it in the car. So I had a recording session, so I took it out of the car, left the shotgun and the cartridges in the studio. Of course, I'd forgot about them. That was after I moved out of there. A couple of weeks later, there was a big argument about money.
Between you and Joe?
Yeah, between Joe and myself, about money. And I said to Joe, I said, look, if you don't square me for royalties, you can stuff the lot, and you know where to stuff it. And he said, well, I'll finish you. He said, I made you and I'll break you. He said, you'd never record for anybody else. He said, I'll make sure of that. So out I went in a temper, that was it. The end of it, and the next thing I knew was detectives knocking at the door.
When I woke up about 8 o'clock, I went downstairs and he was cooking toast. He had toast going, which was burning. I took it off the stove, it was all burning. I made some fresh toast, put it on the table with some coffee, and Joe drank it and ate the toast. And he wasn't talking to me at all now. He was, he must have been well peeled up. He took a painting off the wall, one that he'd painted himself, put it next to the electric fire and let it burn. And he said, they're not effing well getting this. And then he gave me the final note. I'm leaving now, I'm going now, I think it said. Goodbye. And he went straight upstairs. And then the next thing I hear, I could hear music again. 2 or 3 minutes later, up come Mrs. Shenton. She just whispered to me, what's going on? You know, what sort of mood is he in today? I said, oh, God, you know, he's in a terrible mood today. She said, oh, I'll sort him out, love, don't worry. Where is he? I said, he's up in the studio. Oh, don't worry, she said, I'll sort him out. With that, she gave me the cigarette that she was smoking. She said, can you hold on to that for a minute, please? Meaning that she was only going to be up there a second. And I took the cigarette from her. I walked into the office and put it in the ashtray. And she was upstairs, and all of a sudden I could hear, calm down, Joe. Where's the book, he said. And Joe said, I want the book. I've always drawn the conclusion it must have been the rent book. Because there's been a lot of problems with the rent being paid, and the lease of the building was about to run out. And I just walked back into the office and I heard the bang. I mean, it was an almighty bang. I ran out. I was just about to run up the stairs, and Mrs. Shenton was falling down, and she fell down right to the bottom of the stairs, right into my arms, and I was instantly sort of shocked. Really didn't know what had happened. Then I gently sort of pulled her down, and I just shouted up, "She's dead." You know, I assumed that she was dead. I had no idea if she was, but I assumed she must have been. I attempted to run up the stairs when I heard the second bang. And I sort of looked over and I could see Joe lying on the floor with a gun beside him.
Well, he was very high-strung up in the last 12 months.
He was a sick man the last 6 months, there's no doubt about that. He was taking these tablets for depression, and they didn't seem to do him a lot of good. But he needed a real good rest, that's what he needed.
He should have come home before.
He should have come home and had a good rest, and he'd have been all right.
But or were you aware of any reasons why he needed to rest?
Oh, we knew he was overworked, I mean.
Well, the pressure was getting to him, and I mean, he lives in a different world in London.
If I call out your name like a song.
Joe Meek shot himself on the 8th anniversary of the death of his idol, Buddy Holly. A year later, his family won the case for the royalties from Telstar.
One of my favourites is one of the last records he made was by the Crying Shames called Please Stay. Have you heard it? I like that. It's a nice record.
Be different. Please stay. Don't go. Please stay. You know I always love you, darling. Please stay. Don't go. Please stay.
Well, anyway, I think that's about all. Thank you once again for giving me this opportunity, and if there is anything else I can help you with, please let me know. Goodbye.